we have to be very careful to think that somehow we can be the self-appointed judge and jury in a case. And I think this is what's happening on many of the talk shows, that certain television hosts have become the self-appointed judge, jury, and they also want to be the executioner. And that seems to be the case in the O.J. Simpson.
Well, you know, they also want to be the executioner. I think Robert McNeil is a very sincere, very nice man who was a guest on this show recently, was speaking about me. At least at that moment, I had something to do with his comments. I want to be the judge, the jury, and also the executioner. I'm not really a host. I want to take a moment to explain what I'm doing here. I'm not really a host. I really came here to be on this following Tom Snyder, who originally had this time slot, because I noticed that Tom Snyder got about 10 minutes at the beginning of every show to say anything he wanted. And while primarily it was of a lighter nature, which is how I started, at some point I had the opportunity to, because of the O.J. Simpson trial, really, to speak about anything, light or not light. And lately it's been not light. But I guess I'm a host because it says this is the Charles Grodin show, but I am here because I get this 10-minute opportunity at the beginning of the show. I would not have, like, stopped everything I was doing to come to Fort Lee and be on CNBC without this 10-minute opportunity to say anything I want. I see myself more as a commentator than a host, and as a commentator I'm given the opportunity and the privilege to comment on anything. And in this case, Robert McNeil is speaking about the O.J. Simpson trial, but it could be about tobacco companies, the lobbyists, it could be about the airlines, it could be about anything. It could be about the Alex Kelly case, where he was there was a hung jury, and this fellow who was accused of, will be accused of raping 2 women in a short period of time, 2 women that didn't know each other, all filed criminal charges against him, and he was, there was a hung jury, 4-2, for convicting him. And I can comment on that. I can say that this is, you know, since a gynecologist examined specifically the one woman that I know of and said this was a vicious assault on this woman, I have no doubt in my mind that Alex Kelly did this, or that he raped these 2 women. I can say that. I can say that because this is America, number 1, CNBC, cable, number 2. I probably couldn't say it on the network, but it's clear to me from the evidence as presented from these women that have lived through 10 years of living with these rapes, that this is what happened. But you get an, expensive attorney, and here we are again. We got a hung jury. I can say that. I can say anything I want about anything. And that's a tribute to CNBC. I'm not a judge, a jury, executioner. I'm a commentator. I can comment on these things. And I think I salute, you know, all the cable stations that allow people like me and other people and other cable networks to say what they want. It's rare. It's a privilege. Well, why am I saying what I say about the O.J. Simpson case? And that's why I think, by the way, that people tune in to look at me, because they know they're going to hear what I think. I don't really care. No executive at NBC, General Electric, or CNBC is going to call me and say, why did you say that? What do you do? They never do that. They would in any other country, I could imagine. Maybe not England. I don't know. It's unusual. And why am I saying what I say about the guilt of O.J. Simpson? Let's begin with something that's just been released by Judge Fujisaka. He's released photographs from the crime scene for the first time, and Geraldo chose to show the most benign one. It's the only one I've seen. And when he had on the show the last Friday, when I saw it with John Gibson, they were discussing what they were discussing, but no one ever said, look what's at the top of this photograph. And if you would, Pookie, let's put that up there. Let's take a look at this. What's at the top of this photograph? That's Nicole lying at the bottom of the steps. That's Nicole. Her children aren't that far away. That's Nicole. There are much more gruesome pictures made available. Geraldo has chosen not to run them, and if he's chosen not to run them, I probably wouldn't either. I seem to have a little even more delicate sensibility than Geraldo. That is Nicole. Her children are not far away. And somebody slaughtered her, and we can't see Ron Goldman in this picture. Let's take it down, Pookie. Why am I against O.J. Simpson? Why do I think O.J. Simpson did this? That his blood is at the murder scene? That Nicole and Ron Goldman's blood are in his van? that that the shoe prints of someone wearing Bruno Mali's shoes are at the murder scene? That gloves that were sold to Nicole are at the murder scene and at Rockingham, and at Rockingham they have fiber from the Bronco on the glove at Rockingham. That hair and fiber that are consistent with hair consistent with OJ Simpson is at the murder scene. Fiber consistent with his van is at the murder scene. And at the glove, on the glove at Rockingham, that OJ Simpson has an alibi that encompasses everything. I was driving around looking for my girlfriend, he says, and he did use his cell phone at 10:02. He claims he used it while he was out hitting golf balls. He was sleeping. He was taking a shower. He was reading a book. "10 to 15 minutes to commit those murders? Is anybody walking down the street in 10, 15 minutes? Well, if it's 1 minute, Robert McNeil, again, who's a sincere person that we showed at the top of the show, says, well, then maybe it's a professional hitman. Is there a professional hitman maybe wearing Bruno Mali's shoes with O.J. Simpson's blood? Is the professional hitman? I mean, come on. If you want to explain this away, why arrest anyone? Why ever arrest anyone for anything? If you're going to have an explanation for, and then, of course, the police, did the police lie? Is it the police lied? Well, then, did the chauffeur lie? Did the young woman lie who said that O.J. Approached her in the way that she said, not the way he said? I never talked to her. Only she said hi when I was with you guys, meaning the media. And the photographer really fake a picture of him in Bruno Mali's shoes? Did Ron Shipp really, this friend of 26 years, just decide to come forward and start lying? Did Faye Resnick really say that O.J. said he's going to kill her and tell her fiance at the time, Christian, who's a close friend of O.J. Simpson, who corroborated that Faye said that after she got off a phone call with O.J. He says he's going to kill her. Christian, O.J.'s friend, corroborates that Faye said that after she got off a phone call with O.J. Simpson. He says he's going to kill her. Everyone's lying. Denise lying. Let's see a clip of Denise. She's been accused of faking her emotion on the stand. Pookie, here's Nicole's sister, Denise. Is she lying right now? Let's see that, if you would, Pookie.
Grabbed Nicole, told her to get out of his house. Wanted us all out of his house. Picked her up, threw her against a wall.
She lying? She just you know, what? I have nothing to do. It's a slow. Am I lying? Let's see. Here's a glove demonstration that I did. The difference between trying on a pair of gloves that absolutely fit and one that doesn't, with the latex glove. Am I lying? Here's a clip of me trying on the gloves, if you would, Pookie. I'm not faking this. You think I'm lying? Think I just made that up? The head of programming here is a good friend of O.J. Simpson. You think I'm just going to start faking stuff there? Am I pro-police? No, I'm not pro-police. If anything, I'm anti-police. I was totally, the acquittal of the police in Simi Valley, outrageous. The Gamage case in Pittsburgh, where they said sudden infant death syndrome, same thing as that. Suddenly a black man stopped by white officers, he's accosted, there's a struggle, he's dead. Have nothing to do with the police. No police responsibility. No police responsibility in the Baez case in New York. A chokehold, an illegal chokehold, and another man dies. Gamage dies. Baez dies. The police in Philadelphia, where they had proof of planting evidence against the police in Gamage, Baez, Philadelphia. The police, corrupt. But you can't just say the police are corrupt everywhere with everything. You have to have proof. Otherwise, what if you're a victim? You going to call the police? Why call the police? Not pro-police, pro-truth. This television show here, you're going to hear what I think, and it's unusual. It's unusual that someone is allowed to come out here and say what they think. And that's why we do so well, frankly. You can get to hear what I think. It's rare in television. Thankfully, it's not all that rare in radio. And tonight we have Curtis Sliwa, a radio host on WABC New York, Lionel, a radio host on WABC New York, Larry Elder, a radio host on KABC Los Angeles, Tavis Smiley, a radio host, among other things, also the author of Hard Left. Radio guys say everything they think. And we'll go to a break and we'll hear what all the radio guys, and you'll see I'm not that outspoken. Wait till you hear these guys. Be right back. Joining me now to talk about the O.J. Simpson civil case are four radio hosts. Here in Fort Lee is Curtis Sliwa, founder of the Guardian Angels and radio host on WABC. Also from WABC is Lionel. He's an attorney and radio host. In Burbank is Larry Elder, radio host for KABC Los Angeles. In Washington is Tavis Smiley, radio and television commentator and author of the political book Hard Left, Straight Talk About the Wrongs of the Right. Lionel, did the murders take 15 minutes?
Apparently not.
So that's what the claim is by Mr. Baker, that the murders took 15 minutes. Is that possible in your mind? It took 15 minutes?
Not really. You know what's amazing is how people become murder experts. I've never stabbed anybody in my life. I've stabbed a fish or a chicken, but they say, you know, there shouldn't have been that much blood, or, you know, there wasn't that much blood, or how come O.J. wasn't covered with blood? As though we know the mechanics of stabbing, that we know this.
Right, right.
And that we can say, this murder, 20 minutes. All of a sudden, instant experts. My favorite question is, how come there wasn't more blood in the truck? When the question is, why the hell was there blood in the truck in the first place?
And that's a good question.
Do you have any blood in your car, Chuck?
Not that I'm aware of. Tavis, you probably have a counter-argument to that.
Well, despite my personal opinion, Charles, I respect your opinion to talk about O.J. Simpson until you're blue in the face, if that's what your proclivity is. Despite how I may feel, I will tell you this, though, that I think that what's happening here is that we're not putting this conversation in the context that ought to be put in. Let me try to do that quickly. At a time at which we have stories surfacing about whether or not the CIA was involved in pushing crack on the streets of South Central Los Angeles, at a time at which we're talking about Texaco executives calling people niggers, and now we're told now they really didn't say nigger, they said St. Nicholas, we're supposed to believe that. At a time at which we now see a suit yesterday being filed against Avis, I asked the question, and not rhetorically, I asked whether or not you guys really believe that in an environment such as this, African Americans are supposed to see things the same way that everyone else sees them. And I think that we don't put this in the larger context when these kinds of things and these stories surface, and there is clearly some truth to some of these stories. I don't think it's really that outrageous that African Americans, many African Americans, see this case far differently than other white Americans do.
Well, it's amazing to me, Tavis, that you mentioned South Central, where people see murders every day. In fact, they're more used to seeing murders. They're more used to seeing blood. And in looking at these pictures now that are being released, first in Star Magazine and now as Judge Fujisaka slowly allows some of this material to be seen by the public, I mean, this is a monster. This is an animal who needs to be incarcerated. And for black people to suddenly look at the color of his skin, O.J., who first discovered a black church, all of a sudden when he was in the hot seat, to suddenly embrace him and say, brother, right on. Look at this man. Look at the bad mark he's given to blacks all across America.
I don't disagree at all with the heinous nature of these murders. That's not my point. My point is that because African Americans are disproportionately the victims of violent crime, we do, in fact, want to see those persons who are guilty of a crime locked up. That's not the point I'm raising now. Those are two separate issues. The point I'm raising now is why it is that we are so surprised, why it is that we are so upset. I happen to host right now a show on black entertainment television. I can tell you this, not one night in 9 weeks, not one night have I done one show about the O.J. Simpson civil trial.
Well, that's because you don't have Mark Furman and the N-word any longer to dally about. Now you have to deal with the facts of an actual murder. 9 attorneys carpet bombing O.J. every day with the facts, and he can't run, he can't play rope-a-dope.
Curtis, the reason why I've not covered this case, and quite frankly, the reason why black Americans who watch BET are not calling and begging and faxing and writing and begging me to do this show is because they are burnt out on the O.J. case. It is only white America, in large part, that seems to be still fascinated by a case.
Well, what about all those supporters who were cheering O.J. yesterday at the child custody hearing, say, go O.J., go O.J. When I looked at the color of their skin, They appear to be brothers and sisters.
I am not, I again am not condoning that, and it is wrong for you, Curtis, to sit here and to suggest that black folks think and act monolithically. Those persons who were there were expressing their point of view. Do not paint the entire black community with the brush of those 10 or 12 persons who were there cheering Mr. Simpson. I was not there.
Tavis, when I referred to the 10 or 15 minutes, I wasn't speaking about the black people thing. I was actually speaking about the, Dr. Baden, who said it, 10 to 15 minutes. He was a white person. That's what I'm talking about. And tonight we are talking about the O.J. Simpson case. And you and I will be tomorrow on the Geraldo daytime show talking about race and larger issues. And tomorrow night I'll be talking with Sam Donaldson. I will be talking about the Texaco case and other things. But we are talking about these. Larry Elder, why don't you jump in and to give me hear what you have to say?
Well, you know, Charles, I guess Tavis's point is that this is no longer important, and only you and others in the media are fascinated by this, and black people don't care. I don't know what world he's referring to. But this is a very important case. O.J. Simpson butchered 2 people. He played the race card to get away with it. This naive, gullible jury that was willing to listen to fanciful theories pushed by the Dream Team bought this. And it shows how deceptive this race card can be, and how gullible many blacks can be, because many blacks perceive the world, us against them, black against white, the way, frankly, my friend Tavis, in my opinion, sees the world. That's why this is a very important case. We're not spending too much time on it. This man should be on death row. There will be some small measure of comfort for the Brown and Goldman family in the event that Mr. Simpson is found liable, which I predict he will. But it'll be a small consolation. This man butchered 2 people, played the race card, divided America, and it's vulgar.
We could also be talking about the Alex Kelly case. I don't know. I haven't asked. Go ahead.
Oh,
Curtis.
talk about justice for the super rich. Here's a kid who had a silver spoon in his mouth big enough to offset the trade balance between Japan and the United States.
A white man.
Darien, Connecticut. I mean, the Gold Coast. 2 rapes, 2 separate rapes. They got him lock, stock, and barrel. He's going to go away to jail. He flees to Switzerland. He becomes a European Eurotrash jet setter. And they actually show pictures of him, hoochie coochie, with all the women over there. All of a sudden, he's brought back. And here's a guy who faces a jury of 6 of his peers from that area. 4 of them say he's guilty, 2 of them say he's innocent. What trial were they listening to? This woman was crying up there, was talking about how he had her throat, how he was forcing her. She was a virgin at the time, how he took full advantage of her. And just because he's got that preppy, all-American look and that smile, like that O.J. smile, lickety-split, with the help of Thomas Puccio, who used to be a primetime prosecutor, he's out the door. Another 2 trials, and he'll probably beat the rap there, too.
Charles?
I hope not. Go ahead, Tavis.
I think again, we miss the point sometimes, and I don't know how we do this as much as we've talked about this trial. Apparently, many of us, some on this show tonight, have forgotten the fact, some who are attorneys, in fact, on this show, have forgotten the fact that we live in a system where our system of jurisprudence is based upon the fact that different people can look at the same evidence and reach different conclusions. And I think we've walked all over that. We've walked all over the sacred principle that our system of jurisprudence is based upon. People look at things and they see it differently. And here we find ourselves over a year and a half later, still arguing, still upset. It's almost as if many in America are not going to stop. They are committed to not stop until they find Mr. Simpson guilty of something. And
well, I think it was 20 or 30 years with Byron D. LeBeckwith, a white man, for murdering Medgar Evers. Go ahead, Lionel, just 30 seconds.
That's right.
You know
that's right.
Byron
D. LeBeckwith murdered a man,
Medgar Evers.
and then he was acquitted and bragged about it to his friends while shooting pool. Similarly, the Simi Valley verdict was wrong. Are we supposed to just not talk about something, even though the verdict is unfair?
We really don't care
unjust?
about the color of the defendant. I think that's what we're trying to say. We really don't care. We'll go to a break, and I'll be back with my guest. Be right back.
This program is brought to you by the employee owners of TWA, Trans World Airlines.
Lionel, I'm sure you have something to say.
In defense of this notion that we look at trials differently vis-a-vis our race or whatever, I was disgusted by people that I knew who were white, commentators, radio talk show hosts, without mentioning names, who would watch the human pinata, Rodney King, absolutely being pummeled, and would have the audacity to review this tape. And as this man's being hit with batons, tasers, he would lurch forward and say, "Stop the tape, see? Aha!" See what he was doing? He was coming after the officer. I thought to myself, my God, why don't you just say it? He's a black guy and we don't like him, and it's fun to see 5 or 10 white guys beat up a black guy. So I'm very sensitive to that. But to suggest for a moment that that makes sense and that we're supposed to sit back and realize that we have no opinion. I don't remember the black community or the white community ever saying, We are totally satisfied with the verdict in Simi Valley. He has been judged by a jury of his peers, and we will respect that. No, people said that was wrong, and they demanded the civil rights prosecution, and they got it. So for us to suggest that we can't comment, or that we don't know better, or that we don't know what happens, and what really is bothersome also, and I've been on with Tavis before, I don't understand the anger in you, Tavis, the anger. This is something beyond just a social commentary. I'm serious, and I'll be damned if anybody can disagree with me. It's as though you're mad about this.
Let me respond very quickly there. First of all, it is an insult, an absolute insult, to sit here and suggest of the 4 talk radio personalities on this show, I'm the only one who's angry. Why am I angry? Because I disagree with you? There's not steam coming out of my ears.
The tone of your voice,
I am no more angry, Lionel, than you are. And my point is not that we cannot have our opinions. I started by saying that I respect Charles's right to talk about this until he's blue in the face. If I didn't respect his right to talk about it, I wouldn't be here.
But you don't like the fact
my point is that we have to look at this, I think, in a larger context. And for me to suggest that we ought to do that doesn't mean I'm angry. I think it means I have good sense.
Lionel, isn't it interesting that on this program, mention was made of Texaco, mention was made of CIA. Nobody mentioned the fact that Cynthia McKinney, who criticized the Supreme Court for striking down minority-created congressional districts, the Supreme Court said that those districts were wrong, that they had to be restructured, and all these black congresspeople from the South ran in majority white districts. And when the Supreme Court decision came down, Jesse Jackson talked about ethnic cleansing.
Compulsory break, be right back.
They all got elected.
With all due respect to Curtis, I want to go, all due respect to Tavis, I want to go to Curtis. You guys, Curtis, Tavis. I want to go to who I think is the angriest man on the panel, and that would be Curtis, not Tavis. Go ahead.
No question. I'm ready to pop my top here. I'm hearing this black-white issue. Again, it's almost as if Cochran and Shapiro are talking. OJ, let's go back before he killed both these people, because we know he killed them. This man was the all-American guy. He was Joe DiMaggio. He wasn't Mandingo when we saw him with a white person like Tavis and maybe some others would like to say, oh, you didn't want to see a black man. We loved OJ. We wore his number, white or black. He was the all-American guy. When it first happened, we said, no, it can't be OJ. We didn't want to believe it, but fact after fact after fact came out, and then we started saying, this is a murderer. This is a killer. Justice must be done. And then OJ went out and he pleaded with us. He put out an 800 number. America's Most Wanted finds people with one showing of national TV. OJ had a national show day in, day out, 24/7, 365. Not even belly button lint to suggest it was somebody else. Tavis acknowledged this. The brothers and sisters embraced this man because of a previous battle. This is not a brother or sister. This was an all-American hero who fell and should be an example to every young man and every young woman that when you cross that line, like this Alex Kelly, this preppy rapist, and the others, that you got to do your time. Why are you defending him of all people?
Curtis, on that point, we absolutely agree, and you're right. I have said time and time again, I'll say it again now, that I think that the worst thing that could happen for the African-American community is for Mr. Simpson to wrap himself in issues of race and justice and to become the spokesperson for our community on these issues, because when that happens, anything Mr. Simpson says, because of white America's predisposition to not want to hear anything he says, it turns them off to the real issues that we ought to be discussing about race and justice. So on that point, you and I absolutely agree. But I go back to what I said earlier, not to beat a dead horse, but I think that what I'm trying to suggest to y'all don't want to hear. And that is that when you don't look at this case in a larger context, I'm trying to share with you how it is that many African Americans can believe that in this country, nothing is beyond the realm of possibility. Well, and when you don't look at it in the larger context, you don't see that.
We know that you feel this way, Tavis, and the reason we know that you feel this way is the first thing out of your mouth when Chuck asked you about the time period within which these murders were committed, you talked about how blacks and whites view the world differently. This technical thing is a prime example. This company has lost $1 billion in market value since the allegations surfaced. There's a grand jury investigation. EEOC has already investigated. There's a lawsuit. This is what happens to a company that discriminates. Let's look at this in a positive way, but you won't do that. You want to use this as an example of how much racism there is in America. Larry, this amazes, let me finish, please. This amazes me. Sure. We have all these black Congress people who were saying they weren't going to be elected in majority white districts in the South. They were. We should be celebrating that. That should be a significant statement about race relations in this country, but it's not. We have a Latino who's been elected the Speaker of the State Assembly here in California, arguably the most powerful position in the state, but we're not talking about that. We have an Asian been elected governor in Washington State, a state with only 4.5% Asian population. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about how racist
Larry,
the country is.
It's a crock.
It's a crock, and you should apologize.
I am trying to do what Mr. Grodin asked us to do, and that is to stay on message talking about the O.J. Simpson trial. If you want to raise those issues, I am happy in any forum
He brought up the
to debate you on
Texaco.
those issues.
Who brought
up CIA?
Tavis.
Who brought up Texaco? You did.
Tavis, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Jesse Jackson was right here in Westchester at corporate headquarters of Texaco.
Right.
Here's a guy who called this Jaimetown, spit into white people's food when he was serving them. Of all people, to go over there, knock on the door and say, you're racist, you need to pay the price. With Al Sharpton, a man who was called white people crackers, white interlopers at his side. How dare both of they suggest that they are so pure and clear that they can attack a corporation like Texaco, which has already acknowledged that it was wrong.
Let me respond very quickly with 2 points. Number one, I hope now Lionel retracts his statement about me being the most angry person on the panel, number one. Secondly,
I will officially retract that.
Secondly, I do not, thank you. Secondly, I do not speak for Reverend Jesse Jackson. I will tell you this. He has apologized not once, not a dozen times, but profusely for whatever comment he may have made. And again, I think if people make a mistake and they apologize for it, they ought to be forgiven for that particular mistake, even Mark Furman. But that's not the issue here tonight, Curtis.
But you would love it if Mark Furman were the main issue of this trial, if it was the N-word and not the murder.
Curtis, now you're speaking for Tavis Smiley? How dare you?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Lionel,
Can I say something? The thing that Tavis said, that cracks me up. I don't care who you are. I'm not suggesting there's no racism. Let's just forget that for a moment. Anybody who has a scintilla of intelligence, who watches a significant portion of the trial, who looks at all of the evidence, asks themselves this question: is it within the realm of reason that a conspiracy of this nature could have possibly allowed all of this evidence to cumulatively point to O.J. Simpson? Now, if you are black or white and you think that, yes, this is within the realm of reason, then you are demented.
And Charles,
and you should be incarcerated or hospitalized, white or black.
Lionel, I agree with you. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, but you are making the precise point that I started out on. That is to suggest that when you hear a story like the CIA, there are people who will tell you that you are insane to suggest that the CIA could have done that. There are people who will tell you that you are insane to suggest.
And I understand what you're saying. It's a nice try. Poor analogy.
It's not a nice try.
But a nice and desperate try.
Well, Lionel, you're right. Forrest Gump would have convicted this man. This is pathetic. And getting back to the civil trial, the other thing that's happened here is they put the character of Nicole on trial. They called her a coke-sniffing, drug-using, prostitute-consorting slut. They are killing her all over again, and this man has the nerve to be trying to get custody of his kids after slandering the image of their mother like that. It's an outrage.
And not
it
only
makes me sick.
Not only that, if you notice, an 18-year-old intern, Amber McGrath, who looks somewhat like Nicole, and O.J. wants to go and befriend her.
Oh, wait a minute. You're missing one point.
We don't know that that's true.
You're missing one point. He vowed, wait a minute, O.J. vowed to find his killer. And he has been looking without fail every single day at every major golf course in the country for the person who killed the mother of his child.
We can scapegoat this issue all we want. I will say it one more time. When you have executives sitting around a conference table at the corporate headquarters of Texaco Incorporated talking about purging documents, why, again, I ask, do we not believe and not understand how it is that African Americans could believe?
He knows.
I mean, just because somebody once said,
guilty.
Just because
there's no way out on this.
Just because
one has to do with the other
I'm paranoid.
I agree with you, Tavis. I think Texaco there should be a boycott against Texaco.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what it has to do with what we're talking about, though. Of course there's racism. Of course we should boycott Texaco, and even there's some suggestion that Avis is acting in the same way, or franchises of it. I agree with you. I think it's an incredibly racist country. But what does that have to do with the guilt or innocence of O.J. Simpson?
It has this to do with it. Just because people are paranoid does not mean rather that folks are not out to get you. Just because you're paranoid.
Oh, I've heard that line before.
Who's out to get whom here?
Chuck, the point I'm trying to make is that as long as you have these cases that African Americans can look to specifically and read on the front page of the Washington Post, the New York Times every day, where people are sitting around in rooms talking about how to demonize and demagogue and scapegoat black folks, don't sit here and suggest that you don't understand how they then could think that many outrageous things happen in the
This is sad, Chuck. What this leads to is a professor from George Washington named Paul Butler, who says black jurors have a moral responsibility to acquit black criminal defendants, even when they know they're guilty. This is the kind of thinking that leads to, and it's scary. It's scary.
And I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that statement.
You know, the logical extension of your argument is that conclusion.
Wrong.
Tavis, I understand what you're saying. I understand how black people could look at the Texaco case and look at Avis and look at other places and believe that O.J. Simpson is being escaped. I really understand, but I'm not black people. I'm who I am, and I don't see it. And I don't see it with Alex Kelly, who's white, and I don't see it with Byron De La Beckwith, and I don't see it with the white officer at Simi Valley. I understand. I didn't mean to suggest that I don't understand the black experience in this country, because even as much as a white person can, I do. I think it's the worst problem with America. It's the shame and disgrace of America.
It's not the worst problem in America, Charles. Charles, it's not the worst problem in America. The black middle class is growing, is thriving, where black politicians are being elected in majority white districts. The income gap between the average black male and white male is narrowing. If blacks were a country, we'd be the 15th wealthiest country in the world. It's not the issue number one in America.
Can I
not by a long stretch.
O.J. Simpson was beyond race. There was Arnold Palmer side by side with O.J. Simpson, two of the greatest athletes, role models, heroes to so many generations.
Can we just ask Tavis one question? Just one question, very simply. Forget the black experience, Tavis, or whatever it is. Just look at it as an intelligent human being, which I believe you sincerely are. Do you think that O.J. Simpson killed these two people? Yes or no?
Let me respond, and I don't have to answer on your terms. I'll tell you this. I have never said before, and I'm not going to say now on national television or anywhere else, whether or not I personally think he did it.
Why not?
Because,
why not?
You know why? Because,
what are you afraid of?
Because I'm not afraid of anything. The point is, though, that number one, a jury has spoken. Number two, I wasn't there and you weren't there. We do not know.
Oh, I see. So we weren't there.
Know.
We weren't there.
I wasn't there for 99% of most trials. Very few crimes are videotaped. I wasn't there for the Medgar Evers murder.
We weren't there for the Declaration of Independence.
You're a chicken, Tavis. You are a chicken. You are a pusillanimous, implicit,
he doesn't want to say anything because he'll lose credibility in the black community if he says what he really believes. He's too intelligent not to reach the same conclusion everybody else has reached. He won't say it because the black community will be after him, and he knows it.
You can scream and yell all you want to. I have never said it before. I'm not going to say it now because that is not the point.
Why not?
Because you're feckless.
I'll say it one more time because that's not the issue. A jury has spoken.
It very much is the issue.
It doesn't matter.
It very much is the issue.
Let's go to a break, and I'll be right back with my guest. Be right back.
The hotel in the heart of Manhattan's fashionable Upper East Side, the Hotel Plaza Athenee.
Curtis, they're ruling on this custody case that O.J. Simpson wants to get his children. Does it make sense to you? I'm thinking, like, why don't they wait until the result of the civil trial? Because imagine that he's found responsible. Now he's got custody. Is that a problem? What do you think?
Oh, it's a two-edged problem because it also creates, believe it or not, a little sympathy for O.J. Why two cases at once? It's sort of like you're handicapping O.J. He really can't be at the civil case to defend himself. He's going in there to save his children from the Brown family. And I'm saying to myself, this monster may actually get complete possession once again of these two children. And he goes in there crying, and the crocodile tears and the emotions. My God, this is not a role model that you want any young black man or young black woman to aspire to be like.
Hey, Chuck, can
Travis, go ahead.
Can I comment very quickly on something that Lionel said before the break, because I think it really puts in context what we've been talking about. Lionel's last question to me was, his statement was, that no intelligent person could look at this case and essentially not see it the way he sees it. And Lionel, that is precisely the problem, because you have mandated and dictated what intelligence is, which is basically your point of view. If I or anyone else disagrees, we are all of a sudden unintelligent. That kind of box
Couldn't have said it better myself, Tavis.
Yeah, I agree with
it better.
I agree with what you said, Lionel. And Curtis, you're right. Let me tell you when there's going to be some measure of vindication, Curtis.
Yes. At
some point, these kids O.J. has are very intelligent kids. At some point, maybe 13, 14, 15, Curtis, they're going to get their hands on this trial transcript.
Exactly.
They're going to start reading these books.
Yes.
And they're going to go to O.J. He's going to be sitting in his den, fireplace, wearing a smoking jacket, smoking a Cuban cigar. And Sidney or Justin's going to look at O.J. and say, Daddy, did you murder Mommy? And he's going to have to look at him, and he's going to lie and say he didn't. But they're going to know him. They're going to know a facial tic, an expression, something. Yes. They're going to know he lied and murdered their mother. Then there'll be some vindication.
Well, what about this? I mean, let's just say for the sake of the conversation that O.J. does get custody of these children. Now he's with them. Now he's going somewhere. The children are walking with him, and they say, murderer, murderer, and the children are there. Is that a problem, Lionel?
Well, I mean, that's a problem, and I may really scare people with this, but I don't think necessarily he's a bad father just because he killed this woman. I know this sounds, sounds ridiculous.
Just because he murdered their mother doesn't make him a bad guy.
But I don't believe that he plotted it, and my intuition, whatever, tells me that I don't believe this was something that he's in the same kind of a realm as Ted Bundy or whatever it is. For some reason, even somebody who can kill a woman so savagely and another young man, I don't think is going to harm his children. But the point is, what these kids have in store, and I agree with you exactly, one of these days, Justin or Sidney or somebody's going to look at this and read all of the accounts, the Tubin book and others, and realize, irrespective of what he says to them, they're going to realize that the reason why their mother is gone is because of the very person that's sitting in front of them who is lying. And if ever there was the consummate liar, it's OJ. Here is a man who has been blessed with charm that just nobody's ever seen before. This ability to smile and the ability to just get away with literally murder. And I agree, it's going to be one hell of a day when these kids realize. And just think the horror of when they realize what happened, that mommy, think about this, these are kids. The tender years doctrine, which says that kids need mothers in essence sometimes more than fathers, at least initially. This part of their life has been ruined and eliminated because of their father.
Charles, I'm glad,
incredible.
I'm glad to hear all of the concern that we have for Justin and Sidney. Somehow, as I sit here, I don't believe for one moment that what really motivates those who are still beating up on Mr. Simpson every day, I don't believe that that motivation is because of Sidney and Justin, no matter how we try to spin this in the remaining moments of this show. I just don't believe that for some reason.
Oh, and I just don't believe that OJ Simpson gives a damn about getting custody of his kids. He's doing it as a publicity ploy, so it looks as if he's a concerned father. Does this man, this partier, this guy that goes around with every woman in town, does he really want to be burdened raising two kids? Grow up. He doesn't want them.
Tavis, enlighten me. I'm not sure what you just said about, you don't think that people are really concerned about the children?
No, my point, not people. My point is that those who are still on radio and on television every day beating this O.J. Simpson drama into the ground, I don't believe that what primarily, at the top of the list,
that's true.
I don't think that what motivates these people are the lives 20 years from now of Sidney and Justin.
Nobody suggested that. We were just talking about the children at this moment.
Go ahead.
But obviously, O.J. has little concern for them because he was considered part of the think tank of the original Dream Team. O.J. was in there. O.J. was giving strategy. Who gave Robert Baker the strategy to go after their mother, to literally put her before that jury and tear her to shreds and call her the worst pejorative remarks imaginable? Their mother, and they're going to find out about that in the future. And don't tell me O.J. was oblivious to it, because if he was part of the Dream Team, he was part of the thinking process of Robert Baker that put that before that jury.
Absolutely.
Tavis, you have a problem with that, about the trashing of Nicole?
Well, I think that there are two people here who were viciously murdered, as I've said 1,000 times, and I, like anyone else, I think in the black community, are concerned about those murders primarily, as Curtis said earlier in the show, because we live in communities where crime runs rampant. So we are concerned about those persons, absolutely.
He didn't ask you.
Do you have a problem that Robert Baker trashed Nicole, the mother of the children?
I have a problem with most attorneys, quite frankly, who go in the courtroom and would do anything and everything to win a trial. So I'm not.
So the answer to that is yes?
I am not sitting here.
Is that a yes?
I'm not sitting here trying to second guess Mr. Baker's strategy. He's an attorney. He's doing what he feels he has to do for his client. That's not my job to second guess him.
Tavis, do you have any problems with the case at all? Has been presented by the defense and the murder and the criminal case and the civil case? Is there any problem?
To be totally honest, I will answer it if you'll let me.
You don't.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The answer is, quite frankly, that I have not followed the civil trial the way that I followed the criminal trial, and that's the point I made earlier, that most persons across this country, I think despite race, the numbers are very clear. Most persons across this country, Chuck, are simply not following this case the way they did the first one.
I would have hoped that yesterday, at least according to what we heard, when Werner Spitz, the forensic pathologist, wanted to gouge Baker's finger to show him exactly how Ron Goldman could have done that when O.J. was slitting his throat, how he could have literally put his fingerprints right into the marks, the cuts, the bruises on his left hand. I only wish that Fujisaka, the judge, would have turned them loose and it would have been a Texas cage match right there in the court. Ito might have done it, and we would have had a 1-month delay for HIV tests and actually tetanus shots, but Fujisaka wouldn't allow it.
I wish you could go back. In fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to watch this tape again, and I'm going to count how many times Tavis used the word African-American, black, or race. It is, to me, the most important, the most telling aspect of this whole trial is that especially vis-a-vis Tavis, and I think he represents a lot of people. This and race are so intertwined. How can we, why is it so hard to look at a murder case and just
that
stop
is the most outrageous,
worrying?
that is the most,
Tavis,
you make outrageous statements all the time, but that is the most outrageous statement I've ever heard.
This
It wasn't
man
outrageous at all. It was
Tavis,
precisely...
your whole perspective is black, black, and you've got either the biggest chip on your shoulder, or your perspective has been so scarred. It's sickening.
Tavis is kind of getting ganged up here. Go ahead, Tavis.
Well, that's been happening for the entire show, but I can handle myself. That's not a problem. The point is that, Lionel, if you believe, sitting in that chair right now, that we live in a country where race is still not the most intractable problem, it is. We live in two fundamentally different Americas, one white, the other black. Open your eyes, unplug your ears, my friend.
Tavis, that's like me always talking about things through sexism or chauvinism. And every time you ask me about the OJ case, I'm saying, you see what we do to women. And if you ask me, why are you so wrapped up in gender issues?
And I'm not wrapped up in it.
And I respond with, are you saying there's no such thing? You are so blinded. Your whole world, Tavis, is black, white, race, black, white. You are infected with
Lionel,
it. We're talking about something.
Lionel, I feel for you.
I feel for you.
If you think I'm on this show,
you're probably the worst product of what racism is, because it's tainted you. You're infected. You're riddled with this.
I absolutely reject that. If you think I came on this show to talk only about race matters, you missed the point.
You know damn well why you came on this show.
We live in a world.
Come on,
15 seconds.
Can I say, Larry Elder will be called an Oreo cookie and Uncle Tom for speaking the truth. You, Tavis, you'll have your place in the radical black community because you defended the race card.
And Curtis, once again, the truth is as you determine it to be.
Okay, we've come to the end of this. Tavis, I want you to stay there because we come back. I have a 1-minute ending here where I give a final thought, and I want you to have the final thought. So go to a break, and we'll get a final thought from Tavis Smiley. Be right back. Here's Tavis Smiley with a final thought. Go ahead, Tavis.
Charles, this case, this O.J. Simpson drama, is really not about black and white. It's about wrong and right. But unfortunately, two people were viciously murdered. But the fact remains, we still live in two fundamentally different Americas, one white, the other black. Race is still the most intractable, the most egregious problem in this society. And to the extent that we keep our eyes closed and our ears plugged, we're going to find ourselves one day shuddering for this country. Race is going to tear this country apart at its very fiber unless we get beyond our own personal prisms of this O.J. Simpson drama and talk about the real issues that divide this country.
Okay. Thank you, Tavis. I agree with everything you said. I would also add that I don't think our conversation about the O.J. Simpson case has anything to do with race. But I do agree with you that race is the biggest problem. I know that some people don't. I want to thank Curtis Lewa, Lionel, Larry Elder, Tavis Smiley. Tomorrow night's guest will be Sam Donaldson, and we'll be talking about his battle with cancer, and also Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Good night, everybody. Good night, Mom. I love you.